Imagine this. You have been preparing for weeks. You've researched the company, you've practiced your answers in the mirror, you've even ironed your best shirt and set up your background just right. The interview starts. Everything feels great. And then, right at the most important moment, right when the CEO leans forward and says, "So, tell me about a time when you led a high-stakes project under pressure," your screen freezes. Total silence. Your video turns into a blurry, pixelated still image. Your audio cuts out. And on the other side of that screen, the hiring manager is staring at a frozen version of your face. Do you panic? Do you frantically send 5 messages in the chat box? Do you say, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I don't know what happened"? Or, and this is the difference between candidates who get the job and candidates who don't, do you handle it with complete calm, with total professionalism, and with the kind of polished, sophisticated English that makes the interviewer think, "This person is exactly who we need"? Hello, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Lily, and today's lesson is one of the most important English lessons I have ever made for you. Because today, we are not just talking about how to survive a virtual job interview in English. We are talking about how to absolutely own it. How to walk into that virtual room, whether it is on Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, or any other platform, and walk out with the confidence, the vocabulary, and the presence of someone who belongs at the top. Here is what we are going to cover today. First, we are going to talk about how to make a powerful, professional first impression in the first 60 seconds of your video call. Because yes, the clock starts the moment that camera turns on. Second, we are going to go deep into what I call navigating technical turbulence with poise. Those phrases that keep you looking calm, sharp, and in control, even when your internet decides to be your worst enemy. Third, we are going to learn how to transform difficult questions, those unexpected, complex questions that make your mind go blank, into opportunities to actually show off your expertise. Fourth, we are going to master the art of the assertive interruption, which sounds intense, but is actually one of the most professional and necessary skills for any panel interview or group call situation. And fifth, we are going to close the interview powerfully, because how you end the conversation is just as important as how you begin it. We will give you phrases that leave a lasting impression, not just a polite goodbye. Now, I want to say something very important before we begin. Most English learners lose their dream job, not because of their qualifications, not because of their experience, not because of their skills, but because they lose their cool when things get difficult on a video call. A curveball question, a frozen screen, a moment of awkward silence. These things are going to happen. They happen to everyone. But your reaction, your language in those moments, that is what will define you. The candidates who get hired are the ones who have trained themselves to respond, not react. And by the end of this video, you are going to be one of those people. So make sure you are comfortable. Grab a notebook if you want to take notes, and I highly recommend that you do, because we have a lot of powerful phrases, vocabulary, and real examples coming your way. And actually, before we even get to section 1, I want to share something with you that I think will completely change the way you approach a virtual interview. It is something that most English learners never even think about, and it has nothing to do with vocabulary or grammar. Stay with me, because this might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Here is the secret. The interviewer is not just evaluating your answers. They are evaluating your energy. They are evaluating your presence through a screen. And in a virtual interview, your language is your presence, because they cannot shake your hand. They cannot feel the energy in the room. All they have is your words, your voice, your delivery, and your ability to communicate with sophistication and ease under pressure. This means that every phrase you choose, every sentence you use, every pause, every pivot, all of it is communicating something about who you are as a professional. So let's make sure you are communicating exactly the right things. Let's begin. The moment that camera turns on, the interview has already started. I know a lot of people think the interview begins when the first question is asked. It does not. It begins the second you appear on that screen. It begins with how you look, how you sound, and most importantly, the very first words that come out of your mouth. Let's talk about what those first words should be. The very first thing you want to do in any virtual interview is to establish what I call technical rapport. This simply means that you confirm, in a professional and confident way, that the connection is working well and that both parties can see and hear each other clearly. Now, most people do this in a very basic, casual way. They say something like, "Can you hear me?" Or, "Is this working?" Or even just, "Hello? Hello?" These phrases are not wrong, but they are not impressive either. They sound uncertain. They sound like you are not sure whether the technology is cooperating with you. And in a job interview, you want to sound like someone who is always in control. Here is the first key phrase for today. Can you hear and see me clearly? This is a small change, but it is a powerful one. Notice that instead of asking just about audio, "Can you hear me?" you are addressing both the audio and the visual quality in one smooth, confident sentence. You are showing the interviewer that you are paying attention to the full communication experience, that you understand that a video interview has two dimensions, sound and image. But here is how you can make this phrase even more polished and professional. Try this version. Before we begin, I just want to confirm that my audio and video are coming through clearly on your end. Everything looks great from my side. Can you feel the difference? This version does a few things at once. It signals that you are organized and prepared. It shows that you are thinking about the other person's experience, and it positions you as someone who is proactive and detail-oriented, qualities that every hiring manager loves. Let me give you another variation for situations where you are joining a panel interview or a meeting that has already started. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me well. I am ready when you are. This is elegant. It is brief, it acknowledges the group, it affirms the technical setup, and it hands control back to the interviewers in a graceful, confident way by saying, "I am ready when you are." That phrase alone signals confidence without arrogance. Now, here is something that most English learners do not realize. Your audio and video check-in is not just a technical formality. It is your first opportunity to demonstrate your communication style. It is your first chance to show the interviewer what kind of communicator you are. Think about it this way. If your first words are rushed, apologetic, or confused, the interviewer starts the interview with a slightly negative impression of your communication skills. But if your first words are calm, clear, organized, and professional, you have already created a positive association. You have already put points on the board before the first question is even asked. This is what I mean by mastering the virtual first impression. It is not just about looking good on camera. It is about establishing, from the very first second, that you are a polished, composed, professional communicator. Now, let's talk about something that I see English learners do all the time in job interviews, and it quietly hurts their chances. It is the habit of opening with an apology. Here is the classic example. You log into the video call. Maybe there was a slight technical delay. Maybe the virtual waiting room kept you waiting an extra minute before the interviewer admitted you. And the moment you enter the call, you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was in the waiting room and I couldn't figure out how to..." Stop right there. This is a very common thing to say. It is also one of the worst ways to begin a job interview. Here is why. When you apologize at the very start of an interview, you're doing several things all at once. You are putting yourself in a submissive position. You are signaling anxiety. You are drawing attention to a problem, even if it was a minor one. And you are using your precious opening seconds, the seconds where the interviewer forms their very first impression of you, to talk about something negative. Interviewers want to hire people who project strength, composure, and leadership. Apologies, especially unnecessary ones, do the opposite of that. So what do you say instead? Here is one of my absolute favorite phrases for this situation, and I want you to write this one down. "Thank you so much for your patience as I navigated the waiting room." Read that again. Thank you so much for your patience as I navigated the waiting room. Do you see what is happening here? Instead of apologizing, which positions you as someone who made a mistake, you are thanking the interviewer. You are expressing gratitude. And the word navigated is doing something very clever. It is framing the experience of being in the virtual waiting room not as something confusing or frustrating, but as something you were actively managing. You were navigating. You were in control. This single phrase shifts the entire power dynamic of your opening. Instead of starting on the back foot, you are starting with warmth, confidence, and grace. Let me give you a few more variations of this concept because different situations will call for slightly different language. If there was a brief audio issue at the very start, thank you for bearing with me during that brief connection moment. I am fully set up and ready to go. Bearing with me is a beautiful idiom that means to be patient with someone. And notice the second part, I am fully set up and ready to go. This immediately redirects the conversation forward, away from the issue, toward the interview itself. If you join the call just slightly after the scheduled start time, I appreciate your flexibility. I am delighted to be here and looking forward to our conversation. Notice 3 things about this phrase. 1. I appreciate your flexibility. This acknowledges that you may have kept them waiting without saying the word sorry. 2. I am delighted to be here. This is an expression of genuine enthusiasm that most candidates forget to convey. And 3. Looking forward to our conversation. This signals openness and engagement, which are exactly the qualities interviewers love to see. Now I want to pause here for a moment because there is a broader principle at work in all of these phrases. And I think once you understand this principle, it will completely change the way you approach language in professional settings. The principle is this. In professional English, your word choices signal your mental position. When you apologize, you are mentally putting yourself below the other person. When you thank them for something they did for you, even something small like waiting, you are treating the relationship as one between equals. And when you express enthusiasm and readiness, you are projecting confidence that actually elevates you in the conversation. This is why elite professionals are so careful with their language. It is not about being fake or putting on a performance. It is about understanding that in high-stakes professional situations, your words create the reality that other people experience. And here is the exciting part. Once you internalize these phrases, once they become natural and automatic for you, you will not even have to think about them. They will just come out. And that is when other people start to notice. There is something different about this person. This person communicates on a different level. That is what we are building toward today. Before we move on to the next major section, I want to spend a moment on something that many candidates overlook entirely: the way you talk about your physical environment during a virtual interview. Here is a scenario. The interviewer looks at your background and says, "Oh, is that your home office? It looks very organized." What do you say? A typical response might be, "Oh yeah, I'm just working from home." Or even, "Yeah, it's just my house. I set it up for the call." These responses are fine, but they are a missed opportunity. Here is a much more powerful way to answer. Yes, this is my dedicated workspace. I find that having a consistent, well-organized environment makes a significant difference in both focus and productivity. Do you feel the difference? My house versus my dedicated workspace. That is a completely different statement about who you are as a professional. A house is just a place you live. A dedicated workspace is an intentional professional setup that signals that you take your work seriously, even when working remotely. This kind of language is especially important in today's world, where remote work and hybrid work environments are extremely common. Companies want to hire people who can manage themselves effectively outside of a traditional office, and the way you describe your environment is one way to show them that you are exactly that kind of person. You can also proactively mention your setup as part of your opening, especially if you want to address any environmental factors early. For example, I am joining you today from my home office. I have made sure the connection is stable, the lighting is clear, and the space is quiet so we can have a productive conversation. This is preemptive professionalism. You are telling the interviewer, before they even wonder about it, that you have thought about everything, that you have taken the interview seriously enough to prepare not just your answers, but your entire environment. And this, by the way, is a form of executive presence. Executive presence is not just about how you look or how you speak. It is about demonstrating that you are always one step ahead, that you think proactively, that you prepare thoroughly. Starting your interview with this kind of language immediately signals that you have those qualities. Now, I want to ask you something before we move on. Have you ever lost points in a job interview because of something technical? Not because of your skills or your experience, but because of a connection issue, a frozen screen, or a background noise problem? If the answer is yes, or if you are worried that this might happen in the future, then the next section is going to be absolutely essential for you, because we are about to go deep into one of the most important skill sets for any virtual interview: how to navigate technical turbulence with complete poise and professionalism. Let's face it, technology is not always reliable. Internet connections drop, screens freeze, audio cuts out, microphones make unexpected sounds. Someone's neighbor starts mowing the lawn at exactly the wrong moment. A dog barks, a child runs into the room, a notification sound goes off. These things happen. They happen to everyone, to CEOs, to professors, to news anchors, to every professional who has ever had to work with technology. But here's what separates the candidates who impress from the candidates who don't. Not whether technical problems happen, but how they respond when they do. And the key word is respond, not react. Responding is calm, deliberate, and professional. Reacting is emotional, frantic, and unprepared. The phrases in this section are going to give you the language tools you need to always respond, never react, no matter what technical issue arises. Let's start with the most common technical issue, the frozen screen. You are in the middle of a sentence, you are explaining something important, and then, nothing. The other person's face freezes on your screen, the audio cuts out, or maybe your video freezes on their end, and they can see that you are stuck in the middle of a word. After a few seconds, the connection comes back. What do you say? Here is what most candidates say. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Did you hear me? I think my video froze. I'm sorry, can you hear me now? I think we had a connection issue. I apologize. I'm sorry about that." This is a complete communication collapse. The candidate has lost their composure. They sound anxious. They are repeating the same words. Sorry, I think, I apologize. They are making the technical problem seem much bigger than it is, and they have completely lost the momentum of the conversation. Here is what a polished, professional candidate says instead. "It seems we experienced a momentary lag. I'll resume from my last key point to ensure clarity." And then, they calmly continue from where they left off. Smooth, controlled, professional. Let's unpack why this phrase is so effective. It seems we experienced a momentary lag. Notice the word momentary. This minimizes the issue. It was brief. It was not catastrophic. It was just a moment. And lag is the correct technical term for a delay in a video connection. Using the right vocabulary here signals that you are comfortable and familiar with remote working technology. I'll resume from my last key point. The word resume is professional and active. You are not starting over. You are not confused about where you were. You are resuming. You know exactly what you were saying and you are picking it back up. This signals mental clarity and focus under pressure. To ensure clarity, these three words are extremely powerful. You are not resuming just to fill silence. You are doing it for a specific purpose, to make sure the interviewer has all the information they need. This shows that you are thinking about their experience, not just your own performance. Put it all together, and this one sentence does the work of 10 apologetic sentences, but in a fraction of the time and with 10 times the impact. Here are a few more variations for different frozen screen scenarios. If you lost audio but the video was fine. I believe there was a brief audio interruption on my end. Let me quickly confirm. Can you hear me clearly now? If the interviewer froze on your screen. I noticed the connection may have paused briefly on my end. Are you still with me? Can you hear me clearly? If you are not sure who had the technical issue, it looks like we may have experienced a brief connection fluctuation. I'll pick up from where I believe I left off. Please do stop me if any part was unclear. And this last phrase, please do stop me if any part was unclear, is especially elegant because it does something very sophisticated. It puts the interviewer in a collaborative role. It turns the moment from something uncomfortable into an invitation for dialogue. And it signals that you are a communicator who values mutual understanding over one-way information delivery. That is an executive-level communication skill. Sometimes the connection problem is not just a brief lag. Sometimes the entire call quality is poor. The video is pixelated. The audio is choppy. Every few seconds, one of you cuts out. This is a more serious situation, but it is still completely manageable if you have the right language. The key here is to suggest a solution proactively and to do so in a way that feels collaborative rather than demanding. Here is a phrase that works beautifully in this situation. To prioritize the quality of our connection, I'd like to suggest we pivot to the backup link I've just shared in the chat. Let's look at this phrase carefully. To prioritize the quality of our connection, you are framing the suggestion around a positive goal, quality. You are not saying the connection is bad. You are saying you want to prioritize quality. That is a completely different energy. It is solution-focused, not problem-focused. I'd like to suggest, this is politely assertive. You are not demanding anything, you are suggesting, but you are doing so clearly and confidently. This is the language of leadership, making suggestions with conviction. Pivot to the backup link I've just shared in the chat. The word pivot is a beautiful business English term that means to shift direction. And notice that you have already shared the backup link. You have done the work before asking. This shows initiative and preparation. The interviewer does not have to do anything except click a link that you have already provided. This is a masterclass in professional problem-solving language. You identified a problem, you proposed a specific solution, you did the preparation work, and you framed it all around the goal of quality. That is how effective professionals communicate. What if you need to simply suggest redialing the call instead of switching to a new link? Here is a clean, professional way to do it. I think it might be beneficial for us to drop and redial. The connection quality will likely improve significantly. I'll call back in just a moment. Short, direct, professional. And note the phrase, will likely improve significantly. This is a confident prediction. You are not saying, I hope it gets better. You are saying, it will improve. That confidence is reassuring to the interviewer. And here is one more option for situations where the technical issues are coming from their end, not yours. It seems there may be some connectivity challenges on your end. Would it be helpful if I switched to audio only to reduce bandwidth and stabilize our connection? This phrase requires a little explanation. Bandwidth refers to the data capacity of an internet connection. Switching to audio only, turning off your camera, uses much less bandwidth, which can actually improve call quality significantly. By suggesting this, and by using the technical vocabulary correctly, you are demonstrating both practical knowledge and genuine consideration for the other person's experience. Now let's talk about background noise, one of the most unpredictable and often embarrassing situations in a virtual interview. A car alarm goes off outside. The neighbors start arguing. A delivery driver rings the doorbell. The HVAC system kicks in and makes a strange grinding sound. Your cat decides that right now is the perfect time to have a conversation. These things are outside your control, but your response to them is entirely within your control. Here is the most important thing to remember. Do not ignore background noise that the interviewer can clearly hear. Pretending it is not happening is almost always the wrong choice. It makes you look as though you are not paying attention, or worse, that you are trying to hide something. Instead, acknowledge it briefly and handle it efficiently. Here is the key phrase for this situation. I'm going to briefly mute to eliminate that environmental noise. Please do continue your thought, and I'll come back in just a moment. This phrase is perfect for several reasons. I'm going to briefly mute. You are announcing your action before you take it. This is a professional courtesy that prevents confusion. You are not just suddenly going silent, you are telling them exactly what you are doing. To eliminate that environmental noise, instead of saying, "my neighbor's dog" or "that truck outside," you are using the neutral professional term, environmental noise. This minimizes the disturbance and keeps the conversation sophisticated. Please do continue your thought. This is a beautiful touch. You are inviting the interviewer to keep talking while you mute. You are not creating a pause in the conversation. You are keeping it moving. And your thought is a lovely, attentive phrase that shows you were listening closely. And I'll come back in just a moment. This reassures them that you are not disappearing. You will be back. The disruption is temporary. Here are a few more variations for specific noise situations. If a phone rings unexpectedly, please excuse me for just 1 second while I silence that. There we go. Now, where were we? I believe you were asking about if there is ongoing construction or traffic noise. I apologize for that background sound. It's unfortunately outside my control today. I'll move to mute when I'm not speaking to keep our conversation clear. And here is a proactive version that you can use at the very start of the interview before any noise issues arise. I want to let you know that I'm in a generally quiet space today, but I'll keep my microphone on mute when you are speaking to ensure our audio remains crisp and clear throughout. This is proactive professionalism. You are not waiting for a problem to happen, you are addressing it in advance. And the phrase crisp and clear is a wonderful description of good audio quality. It is the kind of descriptive, confident language that subtly signals that you know what good professional communication looks and sounds like. I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. Learning these phrases might feel a little formal or unnatural at first. You might be thinking, "Lily, do real people actually talk like this in interviews?" And the answer is yes, the best candidates do. The people who walk out of interviews with job offers are usually the people who have internalized exactly this kind of sophisticated, professional language. But here is the key. These phrases only work when they come from a place of genuine confidence and preparation. If you are just memorizing sentences to repeat, the interviewer will sense that they feel scripted. The goal is to understand these phrases deeply enough that they become your phrases, that you understand why they work, what they are communicating, and how to adapt them to your specific situation. And that is exactly what we are building in this lesson. Every phrase comes with an explanation. Every explanation comes with the why, because once you understand the why, you can create your own versions that sound authentic and natural. Speaking of which, let's move on to one of the most challenging and most exciting parts of any job interview, the complex questions. The ones that make your heart rate go up, the ones you were not expecting, the ones that make you want to say, 10 times before you find your answer. Because in the next section, I am going to show you how to turn those moments of uncertainty into your greatest strengths. Here is a phrase I want you to think about. Buying time. In a job interview, buying time means creating space between when a question is asked and when you begin your actual answer. This space allows you to think, organize your thoughts, and construct a high-quality response rather than blurting out the first thing that comes to mind. But here is the problem. Most people buy time in a way that actually hurts them. They say, well, like, all of these filler words that signal to the interviewer that the candidate is nervous, unprepared, or unsure of themselves. What if I told you there is a way to buy exactly the same amount of time, but instead of making you look uncertain, you look thoughtful, sophisticated, and deeply engaged with the question? That is exactly what this section is about. Here is the first golden phrase for reframing complex questions. That's a really insightful angle. Let me give you a considered response. This phrase is doing extraordinary work. Let's break it down. That's a really insightful angle. You are complimenting the question. You are saying that the question itself demonstrates insight. This is true, professional acknowledgement, and interviewers love to hear that their questions are good ones. It creates a positive moment in the conversation. Let me give you a considered response. The word considered is key here. You are not saying, let me think about it. You are saying, let me give you a considered response. A considered response is a thoughtful, deliberate, high-quality answer. By saying this, you are actually raising the interviewer's expectations of your answer before you even give it. You are signaling, what I am about to say is going to be worth waiting for. And in that brief moment of saying those 9 words, while the interviewer is nodding and appreciating both the compliment and your stated intention, you have bought yourself several seconds to organize your thinking. That is elegant. That is sophisticated. That is the kind of thing that makes an interviewer think, this person really knows how to communicate. Here are several more phrases you can use to buy thoughtful, professional processing time. That touches on something I feel quite strongly about. Let me share my perspective. Notice, feel quite strongly about signals passion and conviction. Interviewers want to see that their questions are engaging you on a deeper level, that you are not just giving rehearsed answers. I appreciate you raising that. It's a nuanced area that deserves a precise answer. Nuanced is a beautiful word that means something has layers of complexity and subtlety. Using it here signals that you understand the complexity of the topic, and a precise answer tells the interviewer that you value accuracy and quality over speed. That's a multifaceted question, and I want to make sure I address the core of it properly. Multifaceted means having many different aspects or dimensions. Again, using this word signals sophistication and depth of thinking. Before I respond, I want to make sure I'm addressing your question from the right direction. This one is especially useful because it opens the door to your next strategy, asking for clarification. Which brings us to our next key skill. Here is something that many English learners are afraid to do in a job interview. Ask for clarification. They worry that asking, "Could you explain what you mean?" makes them look like they did not understand the question, or that they are not smart enough, or that they are stalling. In reality, the opposite is true. Professionals ask for clarification all the time. In fact, asking a smart, targeted, clarifying question before you answer a complex question is one of the best ways to demonstrate your critical thinking skills. It shows that you are not just answering reflexively, you are analyzing the question to make sure your answer is actually relevant and useful. Here is the key phrase for this situation. To ensure my response is as targeted as possible, could I ask, are you focusing more on the strategic aspects or the execution? Let's unpack this. To ensure my response is as targeted as possible. This is a beautiful framing. You are not asking for clarification because you are confused. You are asking because you want to give the best possible answer. This positions your clarifying question as a quality commitment, not a comprehension problem. Could I ask? Polite, but direct. You are not just asking, can I? You are using the modal could, which is slightly more formal and shows awareness of social register, the level of formality appropriate to the situation. Are you focusing more on the strategic aspects or the execution? This is a sophisticated, binary clarifying question. You are offering 2 possible angles, strategy and execution, and asking which one the interviewer wants you to focus on. This shows that you already understand the broad dimensions of the topic. You are not asking because you do not know the topic. You are asking because you want to be precise. Here are more professional clarifying phrases that work in different situations. If a question is particularly open-ended, that's a broad and important topic. To give you the most relevant answer, could you help me understand which aspect is most pertinent to this role? If a question contains a reference you want to make sure you understood correctly. Just to confirm I've understood your question correctly, are you asking about our approach to X in the context of Y, or more broadly? If a question seems to assume something you want to verify, I want to make sure I'm answering this from the right context. When you mention X, are you referring to the internal process or the client-facing dimension? All of these phrases share the same structure. They begin with a statement of purpose, why you are asking, followed by the clarifying question itself. This structure is extremely important because it ensures that your question never sounds like confusion. It always sounds like intentionality. Sometimes in an interview, you will encounter a question that touches on something you are genuinely passionate about, something that aligns perfectly with your experience, something where you could talk for an hour and never run out of things to say. In these moments, you want to signal to the interviewer that you are about to give them something special. Not just a standard rehearsed answer, but a real, substantive exploration of the topic. Here is the phrase that does this beautifully. Let's unpack that specific challenge, as it aligns very closely with my most recent experience in this space. Let's unpack is a fantastic phrase in professional English. To unpack something means to open it up, examine its components, and explore it in detail. It is the language of serious professional discourse, of TED Talks, of executive meetings, of high-level strategic conversations. Using it here immediately signals intellectual depth, as it aligns very closely with my most recent experience. This is the pivot. You are not just unpacking the challenge in the abstract, you are connecting it to your experience. You are signaling, I don't just know about this topic theoretically, I have lived it. In this space. This space is a contemporary business English phrase that refers to a particular field, industry, or domain. Using it here adds a layer of professional fluency to your language. Here are more phrases for signaling a deep, expert-level answer. This actually touches on some of the most pivotal work I've done. Let me walk you through the specifics. Pivotal means critically important. Walk you through is a phrase that signals a guided, structured explanation, which is exactly what you want to do when you have a complex, rich answer to give. I have quite a bit of direct experience with this, and I think the nuance here is worth exploring. Direct experience is more powerful than just experience. It means you have personally dealt with this situation, not just studied it. And the nuance is worth exploring signals that your answer will be substantive and layered, not superficial. That's a topic where I have strong, evidence-based perspectives. Let me share what I found to be most effective. Evidence-based is a powerful qualifier. It means your views are not just opinions, they are grounded in observation, data, and real experience. This phrase immediately elevates your credibility. Now, there is one more extremely important skill in this section that I want to make sure we cover before we move on. And this one is perhaps the most mentally challenging because it requires you to think quickly while staying completely calm on the outside. It is the art of handling what interviewers call the curveball question, the question that comes completely out of left field and throws you for a loop. Here is an example of a curveball question. If you were a kitchen appliance, which one would you be and why? Or, tell me about a time you failed completely, and I mean completely. Or, what would your last boss say is your biggest weakness? These questions are designed to see how you respond under pressure. They are testing your composure, your self-awareness, and your ability to think creatively while staying professional. Here is your go-to phrase when a curveball question lands. Now that is a question I want to give a genuine answer to. Let me take just a moment to reflect. And then you pause. For 2, 3, maybe even 4 seconds, you do not fill that silence with or well. You let the silence exist. And then you begin your answer. This is a display of extraordinary confidence. Most people are afraid of silence in an interview. They rush to fill it with any words at all, just to avoid the discomfort. But professionals understand that thoughtful silence is a sign of depth. It signals that you take the question seriously, that your answer is not automatic, that you are genuinely considering. When you say, a question I want to give a genuine answer to, you are also setting a tone of authenticity. You are signaling that your answer will be real, not rehearsed. And in a world full of rehearsed interview answers, authenticity is incredibly refreshing to hear. Before we move on to our next major section, and trust me, it is one of the most fascinating aspects of professional communication that most people have never been formally taught, I want to share something. If you are finding these phrases useful, if you are feeling more confident already just from reading and listening to this lesson, I would love it if you could take just a second and like this video. It genuinely helps more English learners find this content. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel, please do hit the subscribe button right now, because we have so many more lessons like this one that I want to share with you. Also, and this is something I am really excited to mention, if you want even more English listening and speaking practice, please check out our podcast playlist right here on this channel. You will find a whole collection of lessons designed to help you improve your English naturally, through real conversations and real professional scenarios. It is a wonderful complement to what we are doing here today. All right, let's continue, because the next section is one that I am personally very passionate about, and I think it is going to open your eyes to a whole new dimension of professional communication. The word interruption might make you feel uncomfortable. In many cultures, interrupting someone is considered rude, and in everyday conversation, that is often true. You generally should wait for someone to finish speaking before you respond. But here is what most people do not realize. In a professional context, especially in a panel interview, a group meeting, or a high-stakes conversation with multiple speakers, the ability to assertively and gracefully navigate conversational flow is actually a sign of leadership. It is not rude, it is skilled. The key is how you do it. There is a world of difference between an aggressive interruption, where you just talk over someone and bulldoze through the conversation, and an assertive interruption, which acknowledges the other speaker, signals your intention, and redirects the conversation with elegance and purpose. This section is about the second kind, the kind that makes you look like a natural leader. In any multi-person conversation, there will be moments where two people start speaking at the same time. This is completely normal. It happens in every meeting, every panel, every group discussion. When it happens in an interview setting, most candidates immediately back down. They say, "Oh, sorry, go ahead," and let the interviewer speak. And that is usually fine. But sometimes, especially when you are in the middle of making an important point, you want to reclaim the floor. You want to finish what you were saying. How do you do that without seeming rude or pushy? Here is the elegant solution. I'd love to build on that point, but please do finish your thought first. This phrase is a masterpiece of conversational diplomacy. It does three things simultaneously. First, I'd love to build on that point. You are signaling that you have something valuable to add. You are not just talking for the sake of talking. You are building on what has already been said. This signals that you are a collaborative communicator. Second, but please do finish your thought first. You are deferring to the other speaker with genuine courtesy. The word please and the phrase finish your thought are warm and respectful. You are not bulldozing. You are genuinely inviting them to complete what they were saying. Third, and most importantly, you have now staked a claim to the floor. You have said, "I'd love to build on that." Everyone in the conversation now knows that when the current speaker finishes, the floor belongs to you. You have reserved your turn. This is a sophisticated conversational strategy. It is assertive without being aggressive. It is gracious without being a pushover. Here are more phrases for reclaiming the floor in different situations. If you are cut off mid-sentence, "I was just making an important point there. May I complete that thought before we move on?" The phrase "may I" is politely formal, and "complete that thought" is much more professional than "finish what I was saying." It signals that what you were saying was a complete unit of thought, not just random words. If you want to jump back to a point made earlier, before we move to the next topic, I'd like to revisit something I mentioned briefly. I think it's worth expanding on. Revisit is a beautiful professional term. It means to return to something for further examination, and worth expanding on signals that what you are about to say has depth and substance. If you want to re-enter the conversation after being silent for a while, I've been processing what we've been discussing, and I'd like to add a perspective that I think could be quite relevant here. I've been processing. This is powerful. Instead of apologizing for being quiet, you are reframing your silence as active thinking. You were not passive, you were processing. And now you are ready to contribute. Panel interviews, where there are 2 or 3 or even more interviewers on the call, are particularly challenging in a virtual format. On a video call, it can be difficult to know who is speaking, who wants to speak, and who you should be looking at when you give your answers. This is where one of the most effective techniques in virtual interview communication comes in, addressing specific interviewers by name. Here is how this works. When you are in a panel interview and you are about to make an important point, instead of speaking to the group in general, you address one specific person. Sarah, this is something that I think directly connects to what you were asking earlier about the operational challenges. And James, I'd love to hear your perspective on this after I've shared mine. Look at what is happening here. You are creating direct, personal connections with each interviewer. Sarah knows you remembered her question. James knows you value his perspective. And the rest of the panel sees that you are a communicator who pays attention to individuals, not just the room in general. This technique also solves one of the most awkward problems in virtual panel interviews, the "who am I looking at" problem. When you address someone by name, you have a clear focal point. You can look directly at that person's camera. This mimics real eye contact in a way that generic group answers never can. Here are more phrases for managing panel dynamics. When you want to make sure all interviewers are engaged, I want to make sure I'm addressing all of your perspectives here, so please do let me know if any part of my answer connects to what you were thinking about. When you want to acknowledge a point made by a specific interviewer, Tom, I appreciated your framing of that question. It gave me a really useful lens for thinking about the answer I'm about to share. When you want to invite a specific interviewer to follow up, I have a sense that this area might be particularly relevant to your team, Julia. I'd welcome any follow-up questions you might have. All of these phrases are creating what I call a web of connection across the panel. Instead of being a candidate speaking at a group of interviewers, you are becoming a participant in a conversation with a group of professionals. That is a completely different dynamic, and it is an extremely impressive one. Every interview is, at its heart, a sales conversation. You are the product, the interviewer is the potential buyer, and your value proposition is the unique combination of skills, experience, and qualities that make you the best choice for this particular role. Now, sometimes in a long interview, the conversation can drift away from your strengths. The interviewer might ask a question that steers the discussion into an area where you have less experience, or the conversation might take a direction that focuses on challenges you have faced rather than successes you have achieved. In these moments, the most effective thing you can do is to smoothly redirect the conversation back toward your core strengths. But you need to do it in a way that feels natural and conversational, not defensive or evasive. Here is the key phrase for this. That brings up a really interesting point, and actually, it connects directly to my background in your area of expertise, which I think is exactly why I'm well suited for this challenge. Let's analyze this phrase. That brings up a really interesting point. You are validating whatever was just said. You are not dismissing it. You are acknowledging it. And actually, it connects directly to my background in your area. The word "actually" here is doing important work. It signals a pivot, a slight shift in direction. But instead of feeling like a topic change, it feels like an organic connection. You are saying, this thing that was just mentioned, it links directly to something I know well. Which I think is exactly why I'm well suited for this challenge. This is your value proposition statement. You are reminding the interviewer, in a confident and natural way, why you are the right person for the job. Here are more pivot phrases for returning to your strengths. What that question makes me think of, and I think this is actually the more relevant angle for this role, is my experience with. This actually loops back to something fundamental about how I approach challenges in this field, specifically my track record with. The common thread I see through all of these scenarios is something I've consistently demonstrated in my career, which is all of these phrases are doing the same essential thing. They are taking whatever is happening in the conversation and connecting it to a narrative about your strengths, your experience, and your value. The best interviewees are not just responders. They are storytellers who know how to guide the narrative of the conversation toward the story they want to tell. And these phrases are your narrative navigation tools. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. This skill, the art of the assertive interruption, the ability to direct conversational flow and navigate panel dynamics, is one of the hardest things to practice on your own because it requires real conversation. It requires another person on the other end. So here is my suggestion. Practice these phrases in your everyday English conversations, in your online meetings, in your English classes, in your conversations with friends and colleagues. Every time you are in a group conversation in English, practice the techniques we have discussed here. And if you are looking for structured listening practice, for content that puts you in the position of hearing professional English conversations and absorbing the natural flow of business communication, make sure you check out our podcast playlist on this channel. It is specifically designed to help you build exactly that kind of fluency. Now, we have covered so much important ground, but there is one more section to go, and it might actually be the most impactful section of this entire lesson, because this is where we talk about how to close the interview. Most candidates think the interview is over when they stop answering questions. It is not. The interview is over when you leave the screen, and everything that happens in those final minutes, your summary, your questions, your farewell, can determine whether you get a callback or a rejection email. Let's make sure your close is as powerful as your opening. Picture this scenario. You have had a fantastic interview. Your answers were strong, you handled the technical issues like a pro, you navigated the complex questions beautifully. The panel liked you, the conversation flowed, and then the lead interviewer says, "Well, I think that covers everything we wanted to discuss. Do you have any questions for us?" And you say, "No, I think you covered everything. Thank you so much for your time. This was really great. Thanks again. Bye." The screen goes dark, and just like that, in the final 60 seconds of a 90-minute interview, you have undermined everything you built. Because a weak, abrupt, enthusiastic but vague closing communicates exactly the opposite of what you want it to communicate. It says, "I am relieved this is over. I did not prepare for this part. I am not entirely sure what I am getting myself into." Contrast that with this closing. Based on our dialogue today, I see a clear and compelling synergy between your team's current priorities and my background. I'm genuinely energized by what we've discussed, and I'd love to understand what the timeline looks like for the next stage of your selection process. Can you feel the difference? This closing does 4 things at once. It summarizes the conversation. It affirms alignment between you and the company, it expresses genuine enthusiasm, and it asks a specific, professional follow-up question that demonstrates that you are already thinking about the next step. That is the difference between a closing that leaves an impression and one that just ends a conversation. Let's build out every component of this powerful closing approach. The first element of a powerful interview close is a brief, confident summary of the conversation. This shows the interviewer 3 things: that you were listening carefully, that you synthesized the information intelligently, and that you see a clear connection between their needs and your abilities. Here is the key phrase again. Based on our dialogue today, I see a clear synergy between your needs and my background. The word synergy is doing important work here. Synergy means the combination of 2 things produces something better than either one alone. By using this word, you are not just saying, "I think I could do this job." You are saying, "Together, your organization and my abilities, we could create something exceptional." That is a much more compelling statement. Based on our dialogue today, dialogue is more sophisticated than conversation or interview. It implies a two-way, meaningful exchange of ideas, and based on signals that your observation is evidence-based. It is not just wishful thinking. It is grounded in what actually happened in the conversation. Here are more variations for summarizing the interview powerfully. What stands out to me from today's conversation is how closely aligned your goals are with the expertise I bring to the table. I see a really exciting opportunity here. Bring to the table is a classic business idiom that means the contributions you have to offer. Using it here signals familiarity with professional English idioms, which is always impressive in a business context. I feel that today's discussion has given me a clearer and more compelling picture of what success in this role looks like, and I'm confident in my ability to deliver that. Deliver is a powerful word in professional English. It means to achieve a promised result. By saying you are confident you can deliver, you are making a professional commitment, not just expressing hope. What I'm taking away from our conversation today is a strong sense that this role represents exactly the kind of challenge I'm looking for, and that my background equips me well to make an immediate impact. Immediate impact. These two words together are music to a hiring manager's ears. They do not want to wait a year for a new hire to start contributing. They want impact. And by saying you are equipped to deliver it immediately, you are directly addressing one of their core needs. One of the most important questions you can ask at the end of an interview is, what happens next? When will I hear from you? What is the process from here? But the way you ask this question matters enormously. Here is the amateur version. So, do you know when you might get back to me? And here is the professional version. What does the timeline look like for the next stage of the selection process? Notice the difference. Do you know when you might get back to me? Is passive and slightly desperate sounding. It puts all the power in the interviewer's hands and positions you as someone who is waiting to receive news. What does the timeline look like for the next stage of the selection process? Is active and forward-thinking. It assumes there is a next stage. It uses professional vocabulary, timeline, selection process, and it is phrased as a genuine inquiry into the logistics of a process you are already part of. That subtle difference from passive waiting to active participation is the essence of executive presence. Here are more professional variations for asking about next steps. Could you walk me through what the decision-making process looks like from here and when I might expect to hear from the team? Walk me through is a phrase we mentioned earlier in the script. It implies a guided, structured explanation. By using it here, you are inviting the interviewer to share information with you in a clear, organized way. I'm very interested in moving forward. What would be the best way for me to follow up with you, and what is your preferred timeline? Moving forward. This phrase assumes positive momentum. It is not, if you decide to call me, it is moving forward. Again, subtle, but powerful. Before we wrap up, is there any additional information I could provide that would help support your decision? This question is especially powerful because it does two things. It signals your willingness to be helpful, and it creates one final opportunity for the interviewer to ask you about anything they may have forgotten to cover. It shows that you are thorough and collaborative right up to the very last moment. The very last words you say in a job interview are often the ones that linger most in the interviewer's memory, so make them count. Here is the amateur farewell. Thank you so much. This was really great. I hope to hear from you. Bye. And here is the professional farewell. Thank you so much for this dynamic and stimulating exchange. I'm truly looking forward to the possibility of contributing to your team. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Let's look at this phrase carefully. Dynamic and stimulating exchange. Instead of saying the interview or just this conversation, you are characterizing it as a dynamic and stimulating exchange. You are describing what it felt like: energetic, intellectually engaging, productive. This makes the interviewer feel good about the time they spent with you, and people hire people they feel good about. I'm truly looking forward to the possibility of contributing. Contributing is an action word. You are not just hoping to work with them, you are looking forward to contributing, to adding value, to making things better, and truly adds a note of genuine sincerity. Have a wonderful rest of your day. This is a warm, human touch that takes the conversation from purely professional to genuinely personal. It is a small thing, but it reminds the interviewer that behind the polished language and the professional vocabulary, there is a real person, warm, considerate, and likable. Here are a few more powerful farewell variations. This has been a thoroughly engaging conversation. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and for giving me such a full picture of the role. I leave this conversation feeling genuinely excited about the opportunity. Thoroughly engaging, enthusiastic, and specific. Thoughtful questions. You are complimenting their interviewing skills, which is gracious and memorable. I leave this conversation feeling genuinely excited. You are stating your emotional response clearly, which is bold, authentic, and compelling. Thank you for investing your time in this conversation today. I found it genuinely illuminating, and I'm more enthusiastic about this role than ever. I look forward to the next steps. Investing your time. Time is the most valuable resource anyone has. By acknowledging that they invested it, not just spent it, you are showing genuine appreciation. And, more enthusiastic than ever, signals that the conversation itself has increased your interest in the role. Interviewers love to hear that. It's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate the openness with which you've discussed the team's priorities and challenges. It speaks very well of the culture here. I'm looking forward to the next conversation. This farewell does something especially clever. It complements the culture of the organization based on the interviewer's behavior in the conversation. By saying their openness speaks very well of the culture here, you are making a positive observation about the entire company based on this interaction. This is insightful, sophisticated, and deeply flattering, without being sycophantic. While we are talking about closing with authority, I want to add one more element that happens after the video call ends, but is absolutely part of the interview process: the follow-up message. Sending a brief, professional follow-up email within 24 hours of a job interview is one of the most underused strategies in professional English. Most candidates do not do it, and for those who do, most write something generic like, "Thank you for meeting with me today. It was great to talk with you." Instead, here is a template that leaves a lasting professional impression. Subject: follow-up. Your name, position title, interview. Dear interviewer's name, thank you for the engaging and insightful conversation we had today. I found our discussion about specific topic you discussed particularly stimulating, and I wanted to reiterate my enthusiasm for the position title role. Based on our dialogue, I am confident that my experience in your area of expertise aligns well with your team's priorities around something they mentioned. I look forward to the possibility of contributing to company name's continued success. Please do not hesitate to reach out if there is any additional information I can provide. I look forward to hearing about the next steps in the process. Warm regards, your name. Notice the key elements of this follow-up. It references a specific topic from the conversation. This shows you were listening and engaged, not just reciting prepared answers. It reiterates your enthusiasm. Not generic excitement, but enthusiasm tied to specific things the interviewer mentioned. And it ends with a professional, forward-looking statement that assumes continued communication. This kind of follow-up email is remembered. It sets you apart, and it can absolutely be the thing that tips the scales in your favor when the hiring team is deciding between two strong candidates. Now that we have walked through all 5 major sections, the virtual first impression, navigating technical turbulence, reframing complex questions, the assertive interruption, and closing with authority, I want to take some time to go deeper into the individual vocabulary and phrases that underpin all of this. Because here is the thing. The phrases we have been learning work partly because of the ideas they express, but they also work because of the specific words they contain. The vocabulary of professional, sophisticated English is a skill set in itself, and the more you understand individual words and their power, the more naturally you will be able to create your own high-impact phrases, not just reproduce the ones you have memorized. So let's spend some time with the building blocks of executive English. Verbs are the engine of language. They carry the action, the energy, the direction. And in professional English, the difference between a weak verb and a strong verb can completely change how you are perceived. Here are the most powerful verbs for professional interview communication, with examples of how to use them. Navigate. To navigate a challenge means to handle it skillfully, especially when it is complex or uncertain. I navigated a significant organizational restructuring during my time at XYZ company. This is much stronger than I dealt with a big change at my company. Leverage. To leverage something means to use it strategically to achieve a greater result. I was able to leverage my cross-functional relationships to accelerate the project timeline. Not use, leverage. Spearhead. To spearhead something means to lead it, to be the driving force behind it. I spearheaded the company's first international expansion initiative. Stronger than I led. It implies that you were the primary driver. Architect. Used as a verb, to architect something means to design and build it with deliberate intention. I architected a new client onboarding process that reduced average setup time by 40%. This verb implies both creativity and technical skill. Orchestrate. To orchestrate means to coordinate many different elements or people toward a unified goal, the way a conductor orchestrates musicians. I orchestrated a cross-departmental collaboration that resulted in a 20% increase in efficiency. Champion. To champion something means to actively advocate for and support it. I championed the adoption of new CRM technology across our sales team. This verb signals leadership through persuasion and influence. Cultivate. To cultivate means to develop something carefully over time, like growing a plant. I have cultivated strong, long-term relationships with our key strategic partners. This implies patience, intention, and care. Synthesize. To synthesize means to combine different elements into a coherent whole. My role involved synthesizing data from multiple sources to produce actionable executive reports. This implies both analytical ability and communication skill. The right adjectives can instantly add sophistication and credibility to your answers. Here are the most effective ones for interview contexts. Strategic, showing deliberate, long-term planning. I bring a strategic perspective to operational challenges. Better than, I think ahead. Meticulous, extremely careful and precise. I am meticulous in my approach to data accuracy. Better than, I am careful with data. Collaborative, working effectively with others. My working style is highly collaborative. I genuinely believe that diverse teams produce superior outcomes. Better than, I like working with people. Adaptable, able to adjust to new conditions quickly. I am deeply adaptable. I thrive in evolving environments. Better than, I am flexible. Resilient, recovering quickly from difficulties. Throughout my career, I have demonstrated resilience in navigating uncertainty. Better than, I don't give up easily. Proactive, taking action before problems arise. I tend to be highly proactive. I prefer to anticipate challenges rather than simply react to them. Better than, I don't wait for problems. Impactful, producing significant, meaningful results. In my previous role, I was focused on delivering impactful, measurable outcomes. Better than, I got results. Nuanced, showing subtle, sophisticated understanding. My approach to client management is highly nuanced. I recognize that each relationship requires a different kind of attention. Better than, I treat every client differently. One of the things that distinguishes truly fluent professional speakers is their ability to move smoothly between ideas without jarring transitions. Here are the connective phrases that the best speakers use. Building on that, use this when you want to add to a point that has just been made. To put that in context, use this when you want to provide background information that makes your point more meaningful. What this means in practice is, use this when you want to move from an abstract idea to a concrete example. The implications of this are, use this when you want to explain the consequences or significance of something. Drawing on my experience with, use this when you want to connect a theoretical point to a personal example. To distill this to its essence, use this when you want to summarize something complex in simple terms. What underpins all of this is, use this when you want to identify the fundamental principle beneath multiple specific points. The thread connecting all of these is, use this when you want to show the coherence and consistency in different aspects of your answer. One of the most delicate balancing acts in a job interview is projecting strong confidence without tipping into arrogance. Here is how to do it. Instead of, I am the best candidate for this role, say, based on the requirements we've discussed, I believe my background is a strong and specific match for what you are looking for. Instead of, I know I can do this job, say, I have a deep level of confidence in my ability to perform at a high level in this role, based on the direct experience I have in each of the key areas you've described. Instead of, I've done this before, so I know exactly what to do, say, I have significant direct experience in this space, and I am confident that experience translates directly to the challenges you've outlined. Instead of, I'll definitely succeed here, say, I see a clear pathway to making a meaningful contribution here, and I'm genuinely energized by the challenge. Notice the pattern. Confident statements are always paired with evidence, experience, background, specific skills, or with specificity, what the challenge is, what the pathway looks like. Pure confidence without backing sounds arrogant. Confidence grounded in evidence sounds professional and compelling. No interview guide would be complete without addressing the classic question, what is your greatest weakness? This question makes many candidates deeply uncomfortable, and the discomfort often leads to one of two bad responses, either a fake weakness disguised as a strength, I work too hard, I care too much, which interviewers see through immediately, or a genuine, unguarded confession of a real flaw without any redemptive context. Here is the professional framework for this question. 1. Name a real weakness, but one that you are actively working on. 2. Explain what you have done to address it. 3. Describe the progress you have made. And here is a phrase framework to deliver this beautifully. An area I have been intentionally developing is skill, quality. I recognized early in my career that brief explanation of the challenge. In response, I have specific actions taken, courses, mentorship, practice. The progress I have made is specific evidence of improvement, though I recognize it is an ongoing journey. Let's look at a full example. An area I have been intentionally developing is public speaking in high-stakes settings. I recognized early in my career that while I was confident in one-on-one and small group settings, I was less so in large presentations. In response, I joined a professional speaking group, volunteered to present at every available opportunity in my organization, and actively sought feedback from trusted colleagues. The progress I've made is reflected in the fact that I was recently selected to present our team's findings to the board of directors, something I would not have had the confidence to do 2 years ago. I remain committed to continuing to develop in this area. This is a sophisticated, honest, compelling answer. It shows self-awareness. It shows initiative. It shows growth. And it ends with a statement of ongoing commitment, which signals maturity and a growth mindset. Now I want to spend some time on the other side of the coin. Not what you should say, but what you should definitely not say. Because in many cases, knowing the mistakes is just as valuable as knowing the best practices. Here are the most common language mistakes that English learners make in virtual job interviews and exactly what to say instead. Mistake 1. Over-apologizing. We touched on this earlier, but it is worth dedicating a full discussion to because it is one of the most pervasive habits among non-native English speakers in professional settings. Here are phrases that signal over-apology. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. I apologize. I apologize. I'm sorry if my English isn't perfect. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Each of these phrases has a better, more professional alternative. I'm so sorry. Thank you for your patience. Sorry about that. Let's continue from where we left off. I apologize. I apologize. I appreciate your understanding. I'm sorry if my English isn't perfect. Do not say this at all. Never apologize for your English in a professional setting. Instead, just speak. If something is unclear, the interviewer will ask you to clarify. Your English got you into this interview. Trust it. Sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to add something here if I may. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Could you elaborate on that point? I want to make sure I have a complete understanding. Mistake 2. Using filler words under pressure. The most common filler words in English are like, you know, I mean, and kind of / sort of. Every native English speaker uses these sometimes, but excessive filler word use in a formal interview setting signals nervousness and lack of preparedness. The solution is not to eliminate all pause sounds, it is to replace them with professional alternatives. Instead of pause, take a breath. Say nothing for 1 or 2 seconds. Silence is professional. It signals that you are thinking before speaking, which is a sign of quality communication. Instead of like as a filler, for instance, for example, specifically, in particular. Instead of, you know, remove it entirely. You do not need it. It is a filler that does not add meaning. Instead of, I mean, to be more precise, what I would say is, to clarify. Instead of, kind of / sort of, be specific. Instead of, it was kind of a large project, say, it was a substantial project involving 15 stakeholders. The key is precision. Filler words usually appear when we are not being specific enough. When you force yourself to be specific, to name exact numbers, to use exact terms, to give exact examples, the filler words naturally decrease. Mistake 3. Giving too short or too long answers. Both extremes are problematic in a job interview. Too short answers signal that you are not thinking deeply about the question or that you do not have much to say. A one-sentence answer to a behavioral question, tell me about a time you led a team, is almost never sufficient. Too long answers signal a lack of self-awareness about the listener's experience. Rambling for 5 minutes without checking in with the interviewer can cause them to lose the thread and their interest. The professional solution is to use the STAR method as your structural guide and then check in with the interviewer after you have completed your answer. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. A well-structured STAR answer typically takes about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, long enough to be substantive, short enough to remain engaging. And after your STAR answer, always add a check-in phrase. That gives you a broad picture of the experience. I'm happy to go deeper on any specific element if that would be useful. This phrase does 2 things. It invites follow-up, and it signals that you have more to offer. You are not scraping the bottom of the barrel. There is depth behind what you just said. Mistake 4. Passive language. In a job interview, passive language quietly communicates a lack of ownership. Compare these 2 sentences. The project was completed successfully. Passive. I led the project to successful completion. Active. Both sentences describe the same outcome, but the second one is dramatically more powerful. It is clear, it is confident, it claims ownership of the result. Here are common passive phrases and their active alternatives. A decision was made to. I made the decision to, or the team and I decided to. The process was improved by. I redesigned the process to. Results were achieved through. I drove results by. It was determined that. I assessed the situation and determined that. Challenges were encountered. I navigated several significant challenges. Every time you catch yourself using a passive construction, ask, who did this? And then say that person's name, especially if it was you. Mistake 5. Hedging too much. There is a difference between appropriate humility and excessive hedging. Hedging means adding so many qualifiers to your statements that they lose all confidence and impact. Here is an example of extreme hedging. Well, I think maybe I could probably be a good fit for this role, potentially, if the opportunity were to be offered. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I have some of the relevant experience. This is painful to listen to. Every phrase undermines the previous one. I think maybe I could probably. By the time you get to the end of that phrase, the interviewer has no confidence in you whatsoever. Here is the same idea expressed with appropriate confidence. I believe I am a strong fit for this role based on my direct experience in the key areas you've described. This is still appropriately humble. I believe acknowledges that it is your perspective, not an objective fact. But it is clear, it is direct, it has weight. The rule of thumb? One qualifier per statement is enough. I believe, in my assessment, based on my experience, any one of these softeners is enough to make your statement appropriately humble without undermining it. Now it is time to put everything together. In this section, I am going to walk you through several complete, realistic virtual interview scenarios. For each scenario, I will show you a less effective version and a highly effective version of the conversation. This will help you see exactly how the phrases and principles we have been discussing come to life in a real interview context. Scenario 1. The opening connection. Scenario. You have just joined a video call for a job interview. There was a brief delay getting into the virtual meeting room, and the interviewer had to send you the link again. Less effective version. Interviewer. Great, you're in. Sorry about the technical issues with the link. Candidate. Oh yeah, sorry, I had some trouble. Anyway, I'm here now. Can you hear me? Interviewer. Yes, I can hear you. So let's get started. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Candidate. Sure. So, I'm Sarah, and I've been working in marketing for about 5 years. I kind of focused mostly on digital marketing, and I've done some, content strategy work. Yeah. Highly effective version. Interviewer. There you are. Welcome. Apologies for the initial link issue. Candidate. Not at all. Thank you for your patience, and I appreciate you sending through the updated link so promptly. Before we begin, I just want to confirm that my audio and video are coming through clearly on your end. Interviewer. Perfectly clear, yes. Candidate. Wonderful. And I should mention, I'm joining you from my dedicated home workspace today. I've made sure the connection is stable and the environment is quiet. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. Interviewer. Excellent. Let's begin. Could you tell me a little about yourself? Candidate. Of course. My name is Sarah, and I am a digital marketing professional with just over 5 years of experience, with a specific focus on content strategy and integrated campaigns. What I find most energizing about my work is the intersection between creative storytelling and measurable business impact. And that's the lens through which I approach every project. I'd love to tell you more about how that has played out in my career, with specific reference to some of the work that I think is most relevant to this role. Can you feel the difference? The second version is not just using different words, it is communicating an entirely different level of professionalism, preparedness, and self-awareness. Practice. Scenario 2. Handling a technical issue mid-interview. Scenario. You are in the middle of answering a complex question about your leadership style when the video freezes for about 10 seconds. The connection comes back just as you were making your most important point. Less effective version. Candidate. And that's when I realized that as a leader, I need to... Sorry, did you hear that? I think my video froze. Can you hear me? Sorry about that, I'm not sure what happened. Where was I? Oh, right, I was talking about leadership. So anyway, as I was saying, I think leadership is about highly effective version. Candidate. It seems we experienced a brief connectivity moment there. I'll resume from my last key point to ensure complete clarity. I was saying that the defining realization in my leadership journey came when I shifted from a directive approach to a coaching orientation, meaning that instead of telling my team what to do, I began asking them what they needed in order to succeed. The impact of that shift was immediate and significant. Team engagement scores increased by 32% in the following quarter, and we saw a corresponding improvement in project delivery times. That experience taught me that true leadership is not about authority. It is about enabling the potential of the people around you. Notice how the second version picks up exactly where it left off, delivers a complete and compelling point with specific data, and does not dwell on the technical issue at all. The momentary lag becomes irrelevant because the answer is so strong. Practice Scenario 3. Handling a difficult question. Scenario. The interviewer asks an unexpected question. Can you tell me about a time when you completely failed in a professional context? Less effective version. Candidate. A failure? Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't really like to think of things as failures per se. I guess there was this one time where a project didn't go as planned, but I mean, it wasn't really my fault because the timelines were unrealistic. But I suppose if I had to say something, maybe I could have communicated better? I don't know. Highly effective version. Candidate. That's a question I want to give a genuinely considered response to. Let me take just a moment to reflect. The experience that comes to mind most clearly is a product launch initiative I led approximately 3 years ago. We were ambitious in our timeline, and I made the decision, one that I own entirely, to proceed without completing our final round of user testing. The launch encountered significant issues that, in retrospect, the testing would almost certainly have caught. We missed our revenue target for that quarter, and I had to have some very difficult conversations with senior stakeholders. What I took from that experience was profound: that speed is never worth the cost of thoroughness, and that in my eagerness to deliver results quickly, I had compromised the quality of the outcome. Since then, I have built what I call a launch readiness checklist into every major project I manage. A structured set of criteria that must be met before any initiative goes live, regardless of timeline pressure. The discipline that failure taught me has made me a significantly better project leader. This answer is honest, specific, self-aware, and redemptive. It shows exactly the kind of reflective leadership capacity that senior interviewers are looking for. Practice Scenario 4. Panel Interview Navigation. Scenario. You are in a virtual panel interview with 3 interviewers: Rebecca, the hiring manager, David, your potential direct supervisor, and Priya, a peer from a different department. 2 of them ask follow-up questions at the same time, causing a conversational collision. Less effective version. Rebecca and David both speak at the same time. Candidate. Oh, sorry, I didn't know who to answer. Sorry, who should I go to first? Sorry. Highly effective version. Rebecca and David both speak at the same time. Candidate. I can hear that there are 2 important threads here. David, shall I start with your question? And Rebecca, I will absolutely circle back to yours immediately after. Does that work for everyone? And then, after answering David's question, Candidate. Now, Rebecca, I believe your question was about, and I'd like to give that the full attention it deserves. Priya, I have a feeling this might connect to your team's work as well, so please feel free to add your perspective once I've shared mine. This is masterful panel management. You acknowledged both speakers. You created a clear order for the conversation. You made everyone feel heard and valued. And you set up a collaborative, multi-directional dialogue rather than a one-way Q&A. Practice Scenario 5, the powerful close scenario. The lead interviewer signals that the interview is coming to an end. Well, I think that covers most of what we wanted to discuss. We've learned a lot about you today. Is there anything you'd like to add, or any questions you have for us? Less effective version. Candidate. No, I think you covered everything. I'm really excited about this job, and I hope I hear from you soon. Thanks so much. It was really nice meeting you all. Bye. Highly effective version. Candidate. Thank you. And yes, there are two things I'd like to add. First, I want to say that based on the depth and quality of our dialogue today, I feel a very strong sense of alignment between what you are building and what I bring. The challenges you've described, particularly around specific challenge mentioned in the interview, are ones I have navigated directly, and I am genuinely energized by the prospect of contributing to the solutions. Second, I'd love to understand what the timeline looks like for the next stage of your selection process, and whether there is any additional information, perhaps a brief presentation or a writing sample, that would be helpful for me to prepare in the meantime. And finally, this has been a truly dynamic and stimulating exchange, and I want to thank each of you for the thoughtfulness of your questions and the warmth with which you've conducted this conversation. I look forward very much to what comes next. That closing is a masterclass in professional English. It summarizes with insight. It references specific content from the interview. It asks a targeted question about next steps. It makes a proactive offer. And it closes with a personal, warm, memorable farewell. That is how you end an interview. Now that we have covered all the major scenarios and phrase categories, I want to give you a practical, organized reference system for everything you have learned today. I call this your personal phrase library, a collection of phrases organized by situation, which you can study, practice, and eventually make entirely your own. Type Category 1, Opening and Setup Phrases. Before we begin, I'd like to confirm that my audio and video are coming through clearly on your end. Thank you so much for your patience as I navigated the virtual waiting room. I appreciate your flexibility. I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to our conversation. I'm joining you from my dedicated home workspace today, where I've ensured a stable connection and a quiet environment. Everything looks great on my end. I'm ready when you are. Category 2, Technical Issue Phrases. It seems we experienced a momentary lag. I'll resume from my last key point to ensure clarity. To prioritize the quality of our connection, I'd like to suggest we pivot to the backup link I've just shared. I'm going to briefly mute to eliminate that environmental noise. Please do continue your thought. I believe there was a brief audio interruption on my end. Can you hear me clearly now? Would it help if I switched to audio only for a moment to stabilize the connection? Categories 3, Buying Time Phrases. That's a genuinely insightful angle. Let me give you a considered response. That touches on something I feel quite strongly about. Let me share my perspective. That's a multifaceted question, and I want to make sure I address the core of it properly. I want to give this the genuine consideration it deserves. Give me just a moment to reflect. Before I respond, I want to make sure I'm approaching your question from the most relevant direction. County 4, Clarification Phrases. To ensure my response is as targeted as possible, are you focusing on the strategic or the operational dimension? Just to confirm my understanding, are you asking about X in the context of Y or more broadly? Could you help me understand which aspect of this is most relevant to the role? I want to make sure I'm addressing your question from the right context. When you say X, are you referring to Y? That's a nuanced area. Could you elaborate slightly so I can give you the most precise answer? Category 5, Deep Dive Signal Phrases. Let's unpack that specific challenge. It aligns very closely with my direct experience. This touches on some of the most pivotal work I've done. Let me walk you through it. There's a great deal of nuance here worth exploring. Let me take you through my thinking. I have strong, evidence-based perspectives on this. Here is what I have consistently found to be most effective. This is actually an area I feel most energized to discuss because it sits at the intersection of my deepest expertise and your stated priorities. Type case, assertive conversational management phrases. I'd love to build on that point once you've finished your thought. May I complete that thought before we move on? I believe there's an important point still to make. I'd like to revisit something I mentioned briefly. I think it warrants a deeper discussion. David, shall I begin with your question? And Rebecca, I'll come straight to yours immediately after. That brings up an important point regarding my direct experience in area. Let me make that connection. Column 7, Closing and Next Steps Phrases. Based on our dialogue today, I see a compelling synergy between your team's priorities and my background. What the timeline looks like for the next stage of your selection process, could you walk me through that? Is there any additional information I could provide that would be useful to your decision-making process? Thank you for this dynamic and stimulating exchange. I'm genuinely looking forward to the possibility of contributing to your team. I leave this conversation more enthusiastic about this opportunity than when I arrived, and I look forward to our next steps. We have spent a great deal of time today on language, on specific phrases, vocabulary, sentence structures, and communication strategies. But before we close out this lesson, I want to talk about something that goes deeper than language. I want to talk about the mindset that makes all of this language work. Because here's the truth. The phrases we have practiced today are not magic spells. They will not work just by being spoken. They need to come from somewhere genuine. They need to be backed by real confidence, real preparation, and a real commitment to showing up as your best professional self. And developing that mindset, that inner posture of confidence, composure, and curiosity, is a practice. It is something you build over time, through preparation, through experience, and through the kind of deep, serious study of professional language that you are doing right now. Here are the core mindset principles that I want you to carry with you into every virtual interview you ever have. Principle 1. You are a solution, not a supplicant. A supplicant is someone who is asking for something from a position of weakness, and too many job candidates approach interviews as supplicants. Please give me this job. Please see my worth. Please choose me. Flip that mindset completely. You are not there to ask for anything. You are there to present a solution. The company has a problem, a gap in their team, a challenge they need to address, a goal they are trying to achieve, and you have the skills, the experience, and the perspective to help them solve it. When you walk into that virtual interview room with this mindset, everything changes. Your language becomes more confident, your questions become more strategic. Your entire presence shifts from "please pick me" to "let's explore whether this is a good fit." And paradoxically, candidates who project this energy, the energy of a confident professional evaluating an opportunity rather than a nervous candidate begging for one, are far more attractive to hiring managers. Principle 2. Preparation is confidence. There is no such thing as a naturally confident interview candidate. Confidence in an interview comes from one thing and one thing only: preparation. The candidates who seem effortlessly confident are the ones who have done the most preparation. They have researched the company thoroughly. They have practiced their star stories until they can deliver them smoothly. They have anticipated the likely questions and thought through their answers. They have tested their audio and video setup. They have had the backup link ready before the interview started. Confidence is not a personality trait. It is the result of preparation, and that means it is available to everyone, including you. Principle 3. Curiosity is more impressive than answers. One of the most counterintuitive insights in professional interviewing is this. Sometimes, asking a brilliant question impresses the interviewer more than giving a brilliant answer. When you ask a question that is thoughtful, specific, and strategically relevant, a question that shows you have been really listening, really thinking, really engaging with what they have shared, you communicate something extraordinary. You communicate that you are a critical thinker, that you are curious, that you do not just process information, you interrogate it. So never underestimate the power of your questions. They are not just due diligence, they are a display of your intellectual engagement. Principle 4. Every challenge is an opportunity. This is the meta principle that underlies every section of today's lesson. A frozen screen is an opportunity to demonstrate composure. A difficult question is an opportunity to showcase depth. A technical glitch is an opportunity to show grace under pressure. An awkward silence is an opportunity to demonstrate thoughtfulness. The candidates who see challenges as opportunities are the ones who leave every interview, regardless of what went wrong, having demonstrated the qualities that employers most value. Because ultimately, a job interview is not a test of perfection, it is a test of how you handle imperfection. And with the language tools, the vocabulary, the phrase frameworks, and the mindset principles you have developed in this lesson, you are exceptionally well equipped to handle whatever comes your way. Before we conclude, I want to give you some practical exercises that you can use to practice everything we have covered today. These are not just passive exercises. They require you to actually produce language, to speak, to record yourself, and to reflect. Exercise 1. The opening rewrite. Take this weak opening statement and rewrite it using the vocabulary and phrases we have practiced today. Weak. Hi, sorry I'm late. Can you hear me? I'm just at home. Sorry about the background. Anyway, should we start? Write your rewritten version in your notebook or voice record it. Try to use at least 3 of the techniques we discussed in the virtual first impression section. Exercise 2. The technical turbulence response. Imagine your screen has just frozen for 15 seconds during an important answer. The connection has just come back. Practice saying the following out loud in a calm, professional tone. It seems we experienced a brief connectivity moment. I'll resume from my last key point to ensure clarity. I was discussing choose a topic, specifically, add a specific detail. Let me continue from there. Record yourself saying this. Listen back. Does your voice sound calm? Are you speaking at a good pace? Are the words coming naturally? Exercise 3. The clarification drill. For each of the following questions, write and speak a professional clarifying question that buys you time and asks for more specificity. 1. Tell me about your leadership style. 2. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? 3. What do you know about our company culture? Remember the structure. Begin with why you are asking, then ask the question. Exercise 4. The power close. Imagine an interview has just concluded. Write and speak a complete closing statement that includes a summary of the conversation, an expression of enthusiasm tied to something specific, a question about next steps, a memorable farewell. Practice it until it flows naturally. Time yourself. It should be approximately 60 to 90 seconds. Exercise 5. Vocabulary integration. Choose 5 of the power verbs from section 7. Navigate, leverage, spearhead, architect, orchestrate, champion, cultivate, synthesize, and write 1 sentence for each that describes something from your own professional or personal experience. For example, I navigated a significant team restructuring during my time as role, maintaining productivity and morale through a period of significant uncertainty. The goal is to make these words your words, to attach them to your stories, to build your vocabulary, not just borrow mine. Let's do a rapid-fire review of the most powerful phrases from today's lesson. I'll give you the situation, and I'll give you the phrase. Read each one out loud. Let the language sit in your mouth. Let it feel natural. Situation. Confirming technical setup. Phrase. Before we begin, I want to confirm that my audio and video are coming through clearly on your end. Situation. Replacing an apology for being in the waiting room. Phrase. Thank you for your patience as I navigated the waiting room. Situation, describing your work environment. Phrase, I am joining you from my dedicated workspace today. Situation, screen froze, now back. Phrase, it seems we had a momentary lag. I'll resume from my last key point to ensure clarity. Situation, suggesting a platform switch. Phrase, to prioritize our connection quality, let's pivot to the backup link I've just shared. Situation, managing background noise. Phrase, I'm going to briefly mute to eliminate that environmental noise. Please do continue your thought. Situation, buying time for a complex question. Phrase, that's a genuinely insightful angle. Let me give you a considered response. Situation, asking for clarification. Phrase, to ensure my response is as targeted as possible, are you focusing on the strategy or the execution? Situation, signaling a deep answer. Phrase, let's unpack that specific challenge. It aligns very closely with my direct experience. Situation, reclaiming the conversational floor. Phrase, I'd love to build on that point once you've finished your thought. Situation, redirecting to your strengths. Phrase, that brings up an interesting point regarding my expertise in your area. Situation, summarizing at the close. Phrase, based on our dialogue today, I see a compelling synergy between your needs and my background. Situation, asking about next steps. Phrase, what does the timeline look like for the next stage of your selection process? Situation, powerful farewell. Phrase, thank you for this dynamic and stimulating exchange. I look forward to what comes next. Perfect. Read those again and again until they feel like yours. We have covered an enormous amount of ground today, and I want to take a moment to truly honor the work you have put in by making it this far. Let's do a brief recap of everything we have explored together. We started by talking about the virtual first impression, those critical first moments of a video interview where your language, your setup, and your energy set the tone for everything that follows. We learned to replace apologies with power phrases like, thank you for your patience as I navigated the waiting room, and to frame our environment as a professional asset by referring to our dedicated workspace. We then dove into navigating technical turbulence with poise, the language tools that allow you to handle a frozen screen, a poor connection, or disruptive background noise with absolute calm and composure. Phrases like, it seems we experienced a momentary lag. I'll resume from my last key point to ensure clarity. That transform a potential disaster into a demonstration of your professionalism. We explored how to reframe complex questions into opportunities, how to buy thoughtful processing time with sophisticated phrases, how to ask for clarification in a way that demonstrates intelligence rather than confusion, and how to signal to the interviewer that you are about to deliver something worth waiting for. We mastered the art of the assertive interruption, learning how to navigate conversational overlaps with grace, how to manage panel dynamics by addressing interviewers by name, and how to smoothly pivot the conversation back to your core strengths and value proposition. And we closed with digital presence and authority. The summary phrases that demonstrate alignment, the professional next steps questions that show you are already thinking about the future, and the memorable farewell lines that leave a lasting impression long after the screen goes dark. Beyond all the phrases and vocabulary, we also talked about the mindset that makes all of this language work. You are a solution, not a supplicant. Confidence is the result of preparation. Curiosity is more impressive than answers, and every challenge, every frozen screen, every curveball question, every awkward silence is an opportunity to demonstrate exactly the qualities that make great professionals great. Now here is what I want you to do with everything you have learned today. Do not just passively absorb it. Engage with it. Practice the phrases out loud, do the exercises, record yourself, listen back, notice where your language is strong and where it still needs development. Share your practice recordings with a friend, a colleague, or a language partner, and ask for honest feedback. Because language is a skill, not a subject, you do not learn a skill by studying it, you learn a skill by doing it, repeatedly, deliberately, and with attention to quality. The good news is that you have made an incredible start. The fact that you are here, that you invested this time in developing your professional English, tells me something very important about you. It tells me that you are serious about your career, that you take your own development seriously, that you are not waiting for success to happen to you. You are actively building the skills that will create it. That is a quality that every great employer wants in their team, and it is a quality that you have demonstrated today just by being here. I want to leave you with one final thought. Language is not just a tool for communication, it is a tool for becoming. When you speak with precision and confidence, you begin to feel more precise and confident. When you use the vocabulary of leadership, you begin to think like a leader. When you frame your experiences with the language of excellence, you begin to see yourself with excellence. The English you use in your next interview is not just a reflection of who you are today. It is a step toward who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is exactly the kind of professional that the right company is waiting for. Go be that person. I know you can. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I am genuinely proud of the work you have done, and I am excited for you as you take these tools into your next opportunity. If you found this lesson valuable, and I truly hope you did, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone you know who is preparing for a virtual interview in English. Your support means the world to this channel, and it helps us reach more English learners around the world who are working just as hard as you are. And please, if you are not already subscribed to this channel, do subscribe right now. We have so many more lessons coming. Lessons on professional English, business vocabulary, interview preparation, and real-world conversational English. And I would love for you to be part of this community. Also, and I say this with genuine enthusiasm, please check out our podcast playlist right here on this channel. It is a growing collection of English listening and speaking practice designed specifically for learners who want to improve naturally through real conversation and real professional scenarios. It is the perfect way to build on everything you have practiced today. Listening to natural, professional English in an engaging, story-driven format. You will find the podcast playlist linked in the description below, and you can also find it on the channel page. All right, that is all for today. I am Lily, and it has been an absolute honor to share this lesson with you. Until next time, keep practicing, keep growing, and keep showing up as the excellent professional that you are. Take care, everyone. Goodbye for now.